yeah, the appraiser, they don't want to take any of the comp I provide to them. Or I've had instances where they said, yeah, they took them and they threw them in the trash, which is a pretty,
Wow. In front of them, huh?
thing that happens.
Okay. Welcome back to the South Florida Mortgage Report. I'm Craig Garcia, President of Capital Partners Mortgage Services. Bill May is off this week, but I am pleased to say I have a very special guest joining us for this, and I really want to thank Phil Biber for coming on. Phil has been a active South Florida real estate appraiser in the appraisal business since 1990. Is that correct? 36 years. And Phil was the former Chief Review Appraiser of a national appraisal management company overseeing a panel of 6,000 appraisers. And now he has his own firm, Watermark Valuation Services. He has a team of very good appraisers that certainly we rely on. And he's been down here for a long time. Well, I tell you what, and you conceived, co-wrote, and produced a training video for real estate professionals on how to deal with appraisers. And why did you feel like that class needed to exist? What were people getting wrong?
Well, it's the feedback that you get every time that without fail, when we chat with real estate agents, we hear about the concern about how difficult things are when it comes to interacting with real estate agents. How they feel that they get blocked or shut down. Real estate agents, they're like appraisers, and like mortgage brokers. Anybody in the real estate business, you have some really highly seasoned professionals. You've got people that really devote themselves to their craft and try to do a great job. And then you got people that are in there for a paycheck. And that adversely affects us all when they're just in there for a paycheck, whether it be the agent representing the buyer or the seller, or the mortgage broker who is just doing it for the money and
Sure.
not looking to really take care of the client's needs, or the appraiser who's kind of cash a check to move on to the job. So there's when those worlds collide, in a real estate agent can deal with an appraiser that may not be interested in providing the highest standard of research and doing a great job. This becomes a very frustrating thing for the real estate agent because their position depends on walking that file across the finish line. So we saw a real gap there, a real problem time after time dealing with real estate agents saying, yeah, the appraiser, they don't want to take any of the comp I provide to them. Or I've had instances where they said, yeah, they took them and they threw them in the trash, which is a pretty
Wow. In front of them, huh?
thing that happened. And, so out of that, communicate what's important to you to communicate to them and say the open environment they don't offer you and up their chances of actually having that information.
Okay. All right. Good deal. And without getting too far into the weeds, any one little nugget from that's something that you talk about in that class that would be interesting for a little tip?
Yeah. I think the biggest, strongest, helpful thing that anybody can do in this, especially particularly when it deals with appraisal, is realize that the most important asset that you have is your ability to connect with someone. So I often say connection even trumps your own competence. Quite often we rely on competence to get us over the finish line. But to give you for instance, you may have all the best data in the world, but if somebody doesn't like you and isn't interested in helping you, that can fall short. You can have you. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So one of the biggest things that people need to think about is not running to the appraiser with all this data, right? Overwhelming them. Here it is, and then expect a good outcome. In fact, often when somebody comes with you with what I call guns hot, how you doing? And then all of a sudden they're attacking you with data. Your actual immediate reaction is to be defensive toward you. So here you are going, man, I spent hours and hours doing research, blah. And then the appraiser goes, what am I, an idiot? Like, yeah, this is what I do for work. Right? Just like you're a mortgage broker, so I'm going to teach you and school you about rates. Well, Craig, I don't know. And you're like, I've been doing this for X amount of thanks for your education. But man, what if I come to you and say, hey, Craig, man, I really need your help. I'm really struggling with this. I know you know what you're doing. What are your thoughts on this? And okay, that's a good starter. And then actually connecting with the human being. This answer is going to get long and short, funny enough. We live in a transactional society. Yes, you do American. It's an American thing. You do this, I get that, I da 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 da. So when somebody breaks through the transactional nature of you being an appraiser, right? Guy comes to the house, right? Here he comes, and they actually spend a little time getting to know you. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I go to a restaurant and I ask the waiter, well, how's your day going? Like, what's going on? How you feeling today? All of a sudden, the whole game changed. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not just the person that brings the food to the table. I'm a human being. And all of a sudden, your worlds open up. You're getting free desserts. You're getting this. Because nobody does it. Well, they
Right.
do the same thing with appraisal. So this notion of transactional stuff going on may not get you where you want to go, even though you may have fantastic data if you don't first make a connection. That's the first thing you do, which runs counter to everything you probably know.
Right. Which is funny because most of the time the appraisal is something that agents feel like something that happens to them. And so,
Absolutely. You have no,
it's
look at
yeah,
it. You have no choice. You don't get to pick. I can pick a real estate agent. I can pick a mortgage broker. I can pick a banker. I cannot pick the appraiser. So it's the box of chocolates that you're given.
yeah,
You don't just pick the box of chocolates.
it's
So
true.
now you're in a sort of a no. Now this isn't my guy or my gal. This is somebody given to me.
Right.
Often people react to that with stress. So stress creates different environments for people reacting with them. And a lot of times their way of handling the stress is to get uptight and just throw the comps at them because they're scared or they're nervous. It's just a deal. There's commission writing on it.
Sure.
Versus actually doing the opposite of what the stress tells you about. Hey, I need to try to connect with them first. And then to extrapolate it further, I've had phone calls where I needed something, and especially when I'm dealing with appraisers and stuff like that, with straight appraisers I don't know, and I call them needing something, needing a correction, needing a revision, and often I'll go, oh, hey Joe, how's it going? Yeah, my name's Philip, so and so, and da 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 da. Man, you're in Chattanooga. I used to go to school in Chattanooga. I will have a conversation with them about fishing or hunting or whatever, to the point where they finally say, what the heck do you want? So, all of it is, don't lead with the problem. You lead with getting to know them as a human being because of the way we live. We're so unused to it. When someone takes interest in us, that takes miles. Now, you're a mortgage broker, so you're a salesman. If you do, you sell. If all you did was have the best product and nobody liked you, you would not be successful. But you have to connect with people and people
Sure.
have to be interested in doing it. Because at the end of the day, none of us are really that good. We're not so much better than the next person. So there's a reason why people do business with you. Well, they may like this, or you have a common interest, or you're part of a group, or they really like the way you handle yourself, or da 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 da. So that plays all the way across the profession, including the
Very good. Very good. I've been hearing some stuff, Phil, that their appraisals are hurting more deals this year than maybe in some prior years. But you hear all kinds of stuff. I mean, are you seeing more challenges with appraisals in this market the way things are now than you have in recent years or no?
locally, no. I think it's a little more difficult depending on where the market is. If you're in South Florida, we just did some trending out this for one. If, for instance, let's say you're in an older condo block in South Florida, that's just beat up by assessments left and right. And there's not a lot of interest in pricing there. There's difficulty there. What am I really paying for this, and what am I really getting into in terms of future assessments and what's going on with the building right now? I think that's a challenging market to appraise.
Sure.
Try to get your arms around what the actual full impact of that stuff goes down over the next couple of years as all these condo projects are sorting with getting in 40-year compliance and also trying to meet the reserve requirement. When you're talking about down here in terms of more of the luxury market, newer apartments, things are pretty decent, right? One could even argue that the trend is up.
Okay.
So I think it really depends on where you're lending, what neighborhood you're in.
Sure.
Are the neighborhoods going down a little bit? Some of them are, but you can't say in general in this market that there's any particular trend. It depends on the submarket. What are you in? What type of housing are you in? What type of condos you might be in? Because there are pockets of weakness, but there's also pockets of strength too.
Yeah.
So it's a very varied market.
Yeah.
It requires a little bit more nuanced analysis on behalf of the appraiser that involved in. So
Yeah.
when it comes to a problem.
Sure. Kind of a follow up on the, and obviously condos are a big talking point because it's one of the more challenging segments of the market. But one of our real estate leaders that we work with, Patricia Plucino, she said, she asked, when appraising a condo, do you take into consideration the physical condition of the building itself, given the current regulations, and can an appraiser factor in that a building has deferred maintenance, special assessment, or doesn't have reserves? I'm guessing you don't really see the reserves part, really, right?
You're supposed to speak with either the association or the management company, try to get warning for them. The projects of the projects up to, I mean, you can't prognosticate what may or may not happen to the project. You can only see it at that point in time and see what the market reaction to it. So you don't want to get into assuming too much beyond what you know at that point.
Yeah, I think that my perception and what I've always kind of been under the understanding is you're what you're doing is you're just assessing how the market is reacting, if you can, to whatever is going on.
One,
So
one, I'm telling you, that is what you're supposed to do. An appraiser is merely supposed to be a mirror of what's going on.
and is there, and basically are you, so just looking at, because I'm sure you've seen situations where you've got condos very close to each other that maybe won't have different price points, but are similar maybe in age, but one maybe the upkeep has been better than the other. I mean, have you seen something? I mean, and that obviously will come out in the wash in what the closed sales are in the one versus the other, and that's how you deal with it, right? Okay, all right,
Yeah, they operate sometimes that like they can operate as their own universe, and yet be right next to each other, completely separate universe. Depending on what because things are so ramped up now in terms of reserves and up to that margin starts to widen. Where it was kind of easy 30 years ago to lump all the condos on whatever the adult ocean mile, kind of okay, they're all kind of. Well, now you've got 30 years of maybe some HOA situations that were long-standing that were never resolved that resulted in a deferred upkeep, and then all of a sudden the result, and now you see a giant HOA fee over here that isn't on the building next door because, the universes have gotten wider among the buildings that might be the same age right next door to each other. Yes, that's
and
true.
so if you're is part of an appraisal, if you're doing an appraisal in one building, is part of that, is part of the process, you're supposed to pick something. Obviously, you're looking for comps in the building, but then going outside of that building for a comp or two, is that typical? And if the one of the comps is in the building next door, that's got a different, I mean, that then can you just speak to how you would adjust for the difference that you're seeing in the two condos? Is that too deep a question?
No, because sometimes you have to do that in the absence of having some really good sales in the building. And maybe you're staring at whatever we buy a purchase, and all of a sudden you're like, look, now we have one sale in here. Your best move is to try to quantify let's say you have one sale that door. The best move is to try to quantify that sale, get the information, make sure it's on that there was nothing unusual to stand back in terms of concessions. And then what the current listing activity there is, and then your goal to get a little deep into it is to establish that sale kind of as a cornerstone or how you look at it, assuming it's a good sale. And then you can quantify other sales further around. And I think that's a part that gets missed a lot in business. People don't understand the cornerstone nature of a particular sale, whether it be you're in a very nuanced neighborhood like let's say like El Cid in West Palm Beach, which is it's a very small neighborhood with a historical designation and all these things that you like, like there's money, you're in this. And they only have one or two sales in El Cid, like a condo. And the rest outside of it, you have to establish the land value outside of that neighborhood to see what that adjustment is going to be for a premium or a discount. Or it's how we say with condo. Like, okay, I've got a cornerstone within this project, and now what we see is your premium or a discount to be filled in possibly this next door, or no, they run about the same. And you'll see that typically, HOA, they kind of, there's no real reason. Maybe they both don't have any acceptance to kind of well things. Maybe the well. So yeah, there is something to it. It's not quite as plug and play as it was even prior to Surfside. I mean, Surfside is just sort of initiated this whole revamping of the code, the building code and the reserve code, so that it wouldn't happen again. So this has been the natural fallout in the older condo market. So the newer condo market is a little more like the old one, comparing and contrasting.
Yeah. All right. Good deal. Just, I guess, moving away from condos, just to some more generic stuff. When there are lack of comps nearby for a similar property within a 6-month period, what's the best practice? I mean, how far out can you go, and how far back can you go, or do you have to go sometimes? And at what point do you just say, hey, this is the best I can do? And could you speak to that a little?
I love that question because I can't say how many years in it because I run it said, look, here's the comps. I don't know what school they go to. They all go to the same school, but nobody's been able to enunciate which school that is. I don't know if it's internal training, but they're like, well, I got these comps within 6 months, and because I know that's what you guys do. No, that's not what we do. And here's the sad thing. I talked to appraisers that have said the same thing about 12 months. Well, we'll find an amazing comp that's 13 months old. They say, well, I don't want to use it because it's over 12 months. I'm like, well, unfortunately, that is not how you appraise.
Okay. Appraisal
requires you to pick the best comps available and explain when you depart if it's a GSE backed loan, whether it's a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, blah, blah, blah. Your goal is to pick the best comps and explain the departure from the typical guidelines, whether it be over 12 months, over 6 months, over a mile away, blah, blah, blah. And the list goes on and on and on. But I think what happens in this business, I'm going to kind of answer your question a little bit in a circle. Appraisers don't like revisions. So what they do is...
I'm sorry, they don't like what?
Revisions from underwrite. So let's say there is a percentage of appraisers that always try to fit the guideline, even if they're not the best company, because they don't want any blowback from an underwriter, lender, etc. So they default to the lazy way of not picking the best comps, but the comps are within a mile, they're within 6 months of blah, blah, blah. So that goes around this business, right? That little cycle goes in this business too. And those are the ones where I have to talk and say, look, that's not what we do. What we do is you pick the best comps and explain your departure from the guidelines. The guidelines are there because too many people, those guidelines were put together so that they would, like guardrails, to keep the appraisers sort of within these guardrails. And when you go outside of, because the guardrails that Fannie Mae gave them are good, sound guidelines to follow. It's not absolute, but when possible, try to stay within a mile, try to stay within 12 months or 6 months, try to have your net gross adjustments, because the further you go, the older you go, the wider the adjustments, there's a greater chance for less accuracy. But they take it as the gospel and go, well, I'm only going to do this, and I'm only going to do that, and I'm only going to do that, even if these aren't the best comps, because I don't want to get a revision. I don't want to be troubled with this file again. I didn't get paid enough, blah, blah, blah. So I got to go on to the next file, and I'm going to get this out and move on. And this I see every day. So if you got to go back 3 years, which we just did on an appraisal.
Now, can I speculate that was a luxury property?
It's a very unusual property in the South Beach market of a single family home. in its area completely full of multifamily property. Well, we need to prove a certain arrangement of floor plan that can only be proven by a confidence 3 and depth, which we can easily detect what the rate of increase or decrease in the market is if applied to that option, rather than give them a bunch of new comps that are indelicate. See, the idea is to prove your point and to back it up and to explain a departure from what a typical guideline is. So if you have a comp that's 5 miles away in a competitive market because you had no comps in your market, and that makes sense, then it's your obligation to consider.
And I think that what what you're saying makes sense. And I think what happens sometimes where the conflict is actually I'm losing my thought. I'll probably edit this part. So, but I think what I was thinking was that what you said makes sense, but sometimes there's agents that they're looking at and they're trying to fit the narrative to what their objective is, and they see the one comp that does seem to fit, but it's as far as the price goes, it's closer or what have you, but it's not maybe as relevant as the other comp. But I don't know, maybe I'm not articulating that.
Well, if you would like some feedback on that, I can tell you where to take your thinking when it comes to agents using data to appraise.
Say that again.
I can tell you what the big mistakes are made when agents feed data to appraise.
Okay.
Okay. So the first mistake that is the most pronounced is arguing price discovery. This is the biggest misunderstanding for the business. And it's unfortunate because it's sold pretty well into the mindset of real estate when it comes to a place. So they have a house that's, let's say the sale price is $800. And they'll say, well, the neighborhood is 7, 10 to 1,000. Pick a number. But it's in the range. And they'll say, well, see, I mean, this, and then they'll say to the appraiser, I'm sure this won't be a problem, which is a huge mistake. I never go to a mortgage with you and say, well, Craig, I'm sure this won't be a problem. To which you say, oh, I didn't know you were a mortgage broker.
Right.
I didn't know you're this good. I mean, why do you need me if it won't be a problem? So that is usually followed with, I'm sure this won't be, but this will appraise out, no problem. So again, connection, remember, connection. You want to create proximity, not distance. That's another thing that you can create distance with an appraiser, telling you their job and this won't be a problem and witness the machine that needs to get the work done. And then they'll say, well, yeah, your neighborhood's 700 to 1,000. This won't be a problem. I'm sure you don't even need any. Yes. All right. It's nice to meet you. Here they have, they forget to turn all the lights on in the house. It's dark. It's warm. It's hot. And the appraiser leaves and goes, man, I'm going to try my best to be professional. That was
it's funny. There's an analogy that fits to on our side as loan officers and a longtime loan officer. And I wear a bunch of hats now. But as a loan officer, anytime you're dealing with the underwriter, you need the underwriter, and the underwriter has an opinion, right? Because they've already rendered an opinion. And if you're trying to discuss their opinion and potentially changing their opinion, and if you approach them as you don't know what you're doing, you get a really hard time getting that underwriter to be open-minded. So the same thing would apply with the real estate agent and an appraiser is, and what I have found has always worked on the underwriting side is similar to what you were talking about, which was, hey, I see what you're saying, and this is how I was looking at it. Why was I thinking about this wrong? Because this is the guideline that I read, and this is how I read it. How do you read that differently? And just to see, hey, because maybe I'm going to find out that I'm the one that's wrong. But the approach always got me a little bit better than, hey, I don't know why you didn't read this guideline. It says it right here. This just doesn't
it
work.
works well with your spouse as well.
I don't even try to do that.
I see what you mean. Maybe I could be wrong. I mean,
Yeah. I'm just taking the L.
I think I can apply it professionally better than I can apply it personally to my own.
I totally agree. Yes.
But yes, so one of the biggest mistakes agents make is they argue price per square foot. The next thing they do is you focus on that one comp. Now, what happens when they argue price per square foot sometimes is they'll hand you, let's say your home is worth $1 million and it's 1,800 square feet and then they'll hand you a comp that's $3 million and say, well, see, based on the price per square foot, this home is really cheap or whatever, And what they're not realizing is that that's not how appraisers sort data. They're looking for the most relevant comp. They're looking for another, whatever, 1,800 to get them to that. Well, yeah, they're looking to try to compare apples to apples. And sometimes the agent will come with oranges and bananas and say, but they're the same price as the app. They should all fall in the fruit basket, so to speak. And the appraiser goes, oh, no. Another mistake, which agents make, is they will hand an appraiser 25 sales. So what happens there is typically before the appraiser goes out, they've already got their best comps. They've got them because they're in their folder or file or whatever. And so they've done the work. And then the appraiser hands them a 25-page signs button. And when somebody hands you that, Craig, what do you normally do? You just go, well, thanks very much. And you'll never open the first page because you think you're confident. You think what you're doing. And you're like, I don't need this analysis. And you actually just turn it off. However, if an agent was to give you 3 comps on a piece of paper with a map on it and said, hey, I really like these, but no, you don't say it that way. You say, hey, would you be interested? Would you be willing? That's always a great start rate. After you've been nice to them and you actually took an interest in them and then just shove it up and go, would you be willing? You say, hey, man, that's really great. Get them to like you, build a connection and say, would you be willing to listen to me just for a second to see how I listed this home? This is how I kind of came up with the purchase price. It's just a simple 1-page, 3 comps. There's even a map of how I thought that I should value, not you, I should value it. What appraiser, after you say, would be willing? Well, you go, well, yeah, let me take it.
That sounds like my approach with the underwriter. I mean, it's what it sounds like. I mean, which is good. That's really excellent.
So yeah, the one classic mistake among many is arguing price per square foot. The second one is overwhelming them with depth. Boy, if you can avoid those 2 things and turn the AC on in South Florida and turn the lights on and be on time, you're building points of someone now wanting to listen to you. Who wants to listen to an agent that's late? The house is a wreck. Dog hasn't been brought in. So, all right, I'm
good. So another question that came from Patrizia. How do appraisers handle bedrooms, bathrooms, or additions that have been done without permits?
Oh, I love that question. You're throwing these softballs too.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I wish I could have it right on the tip of my tongue. Okay. As of today, to the best of my knowledge, FHA, and you can fact check this before you put it out. FHA and conventional have a different way of doing it. And it also depends on the loan growth of the lending institution, wholesale. So, okay, typically in the absence of any of all, start with the conventional loan. If you go into a converted garage without benefit of permit, so they turn it into a third bedroom to put a bathroom. Typical appraisal practice dictates that it is not given credit for living area because it wasn't converted with the benefit of a permit. Okay, now the appraiser has a couple options. They could look at box illegal on page 1 because it has what is an illegal addition. They may treat it a little softer and say legal and say it's temporary for a nominal cost. It can be converted back to its original. You basically go in there with a sledgehammer and some drywall and for $5,000-$10,000 to do on it. That's another way to get treated. So those are 2 ways. One is, and then the underwriter typically will come back and say, well, then I want you to make the appraiser subject to sometimes, of course, that kills your deal. Nobody wants to take a sledgehammer and not get it in the back. But FHA treats it more differently. And we can fact check it before you put it out because I have it ready today. But typically, FHA says any explosion done in a working like manner is to be given credit to you.
Okay.
So the appraiser is well, they didn't do it with the permit, but it's a 3-2 instead of a 2. That's a great loophole for mortgage brokers when they can't get a deal across the conventional to do it that way. Now, there are some lenders, conventional lenders, that actually will do that EXP. I know because it's helping them with client, and they will, as you think, because it's directly with the lender, it's the hypothetical.
The other term that always comes to my mind over my experience in this thing was market acceptance too, which is a converted carport done in workmanlike manner with market acceptance. This is something that's very common in some neighborhoods.
It
That's
is.
typically going to be okay.
It is.
And then we've seen others where I think I had one years ago. This is just from memory, but the appraiser said, "Hey, in that city, they really frown upon these garage conversions, and if the city knows about it, they're going to make you put it back." And
Yeah.
so they did not look at that as had market acceptance because of that. So it's just a little bit of local knowledge there.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah, let's see. Pre-listing appraisals. We're hearing more agents recommending these, especially if it's a unique or a luxury property. You think it's worthwhile?
If you get a good appraiser, yes. Yeah. Let's predicate it on the idea that it's a really good shop appraiser. It's just not spacing out. Because I've seen a lot of pre-listing appraisers that the unfortunate part of private appraising is, unless you've been recommended to somebody, and I get calls out of maybe our website, people try to quantify you on your price. And you can't really quantify unless the appraiser is being ridiculous. You really don't know what you're going to get if you just call an appraiser without any sort of reference point. Because I've seen some therapy appraisers that have been managing at the time of inspection.
Okay.
So I think they are very helpful if you know who you're picking. And I think a pre-listing appraiser can be a very difficult task. The formatting even takes less time to do that. The analyzation of what's really the way to evaluate that price. So you're thinking as an appraiser, boy, I don't want to be too low, I don't want to be too high. To get accused of doing it wrong. It's a good safety assignment for an appraiser. And if you're there, you want to do a good job, it's a challenge. I think when you really start to appraiser doing it, I think you'll see the help.
That's good. This ties into something that I think is something that I've seen over the years as a mistake that people make. And it ties into what you're hitting on, which is this meeting of the minds between the buyer and the seller. And so that being kind of the target that means something in the market. And so the mistake that I've seen is, like, for example, some people will go into a transaction and they will anticipate, oh, this isn't going to appraise, and that's going to be my opportunity to renegotiate this contract. And so they agree on this price, thinking that the appraisal is going to come bail them out to a number that they really wanted to pay. And lo and behold, it appraises. And part of that I've always been in my mind is that, well, you agreeing to pay the price is relevant to that appraisal. So I don't know if that seems like that's a related thing to the pre-listing appraisal.
See, I've gotten over my career in our office, we have seen what they call RAVs,
Reconsideration of value.
On a property that appraised out of contract, but that's the motivation behind it. We're like, huh.
Yeah, you did. Exactly.
You say that contract that appraises out. Yeah.
Right. Right.
It's like in 2008 or 9, there were so many short sales. Everybody wanted to tell, and they were trying to sell their property as a short sale. The seller would tell us everything that was wrong with their property. They said the roof's caving in and all that. Well, what's the motivation? They need to value down. Or when you're doing a divorce appraisal, the person buying it goes, the house is terrible. And then maybe the wife's going, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever had. It all depends on motivation, right?
Right.
What you want in the values. And it's really fun.
Yeah. So, but how does the fact that there is an agreed upon price, and then people will go, well, oh, you hit the number, but
super important. I think some appraisers underestimate how savvy typical market participants are. Typical buyers. Yeah. These people generally look at 10, 15, 20 homes. They have a very good idea of what they want to get from. And I think that holds a lot of water in how you look at appraisals, what they actually take. Because I think there's a lot of credibility behind it. I think the markets, particularly in suburban and urban areas where that sales aren't thin. If you go on the rural market, it's pretty thin, the sales data. But when you're in these heavy density neighborhood areas, you've got really good data, and I think the market is far more efficient than most people would think. Most appraisers, not most, and some appraisers would think, and unfortunately, they really don't give that contract a real good look. And then you have appraisers that are sort of maybe they went through the financial crisis way back when there were a lot of bogus contracts, so they're still in that mindset. And I haven't encountered these people of being suspect of every time, and because there are a lot of bogus contracts back then. So they were reinforced for a long time to be very suspicious of the contract itself. My suspicion comes only with not only, but the red flags that I see is, oh, it was listed for 900 and was on the market for 180 days, reduced to 780. I'm sorry, 880. And then on the 183rd day, sold for 9 on the contract for 940. And you're like, okay, well, that could be suspect. Let's have a conversation.
How did that occur? Yeah.
Tells us what family was thrown into the deal or whatever it was. But typically, if you've got a typical market, I'm not automatically suspicious of contract the way I was 15, 20 years ago. So yeah, I think there's a lot of weight that should be thought about when you do that. As an appraisal.
Okay. And let's see. So assuming something happens and an appraisal comes in and an agent's looking at the appraisal and it has come in short and they do want to do one of these reconsiderations of value, what tips would you give an agent in presenting some information to try to get that appraiser to change his mind, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, right?
Okay. Well, I'll give you a couple of things that I don't think you should do.
Okay.
Run it through ChatGPT.
Yep.
And this is possible.
Yep.
What's happening is you're getting a 4-page response on an arm, full of flowery language and never getting to the point. And then it's suggesting what the value should be. Based on this and blah, blah. You can just take that as an appraisers out there, and just run it back through ChatGPT with your response. And say, I received an ROV and I would like to, and please analyze it. And the appraiser is not going to change his value. Please answer in a professional way that would not always enforce that. But people don't realize that you use it as a weapon, it can be used as a defense as well. So as people get, I'm probably further along in AI tools than the average appraiser. But I'm familiar with this as being a bad idea, because you're not really doing the job of breaking down what you feel is wrong with the appraisal. I feel like it is hard in general to get somebody to change their mind after they put something out there in the universe to the value, to the opinion of value. And then you've got the ego involved in I value it. So these are the things that you have to overcome on an R&D. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that it should be that way, but we're talking about how life really works. So I think your best shot is to keep it neutral. Don't attack the appraisal or the emotion of this is terrible. But a lot of lenders take that language out of them anyway.
Sure.
Just stick to the facts the best that you can provide. Well, just so you know, Comp 2 was not renovated. It's not in the same condition as the subject, which is a total renovation. For $150,000 you spend on impact windows, new kitchen, new baths, porcelain flooring, whereas Comp 1 in the report has, and here's some photos. The best thing you can do is stick to the facts and keep it short. Or of course, maybe you have an alternate sale you work at to look at. This one is either closer and sold more recently. I had a situation lately with an appraiser who was very seasoned, and it was an ROV. And the appraiser responded to the ROV with the AI tool. The problem is he didn't really read the AI tool. And the AI tool threw out the ROV suggested two comparables. And the second comparable, the AI tool that he used, that wasn't utilized because it was an older sale in July of 25, and it was substantially larger than the subject. Now I'm going to say the subject was 1,500 feet and the suggested comp was 1,800 square feet. So 1,800 square feet was sold in July. The problem with that response is comparable to was 1,900 feet and sold in May of the previous 2 months prior to the oldest So my conversation with that appraisal was, this, if you make it just make sense. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. You have an obligation to make sense to the reader. And, did you use an AI tool? He goes, yeah. I said, well, I don't have a problem. I said, look, at the end of the day, you're still responsible for what goes in that report. If you use something to aid you in that, there's no problem with that, as long as you're reading it and it's saying what you want it to say. Now that's fine. Maybe it writes a better narrative than you did. And we went back and forth on him trying to get around just the truth of the simple truth was, this was a better comp than your own comp. And he couldn't explain to me why he threw it out. He gave me some mumbo jumbo and all this. And this is a designated appraiser, high designation. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Finally, I said, that's okay. I'll just send it to the lender. It was like saying, when your father gets home, I'll tell him what you did. He said, well, so you want me to use it, the comp? I said, I don't want you to do anything but to provide a good supported appraisal. That use it. If not, tell us why you can't use it. But it can't be because it defies the logic of your own report. I'll be darned. And it was this is the ego thing. This is the ego thing. I tried the nice way. Now I'm trying, and I'll be darned if you didn't utilize the comp and the value went up.
Yep. It happens.
$15 because someone tasked on it. So I think that's an interesting thing. I don't know how well it will work because it depends on who's talking to them. I have the luxury of being a seasoned appraiser and can say, hey, you can't put this on me. It's amazing what people think it is and what it is.
For sure. For sure.
Every time I get asked to deal with the facts. What are the facts? How do appraisers, what does this mean on the report? And the deeper you get into it, you realize that it has to do with, yes, it has to do with the facts of how you appraise. But if you're going to interact with that appraiser, you've got to kind of come alongside them, and you will not understand everything and how they do it and how they apply it. And they say, well, how do you apply adjustments and all this? That's not that important for you to know. What's important for you to know is give them the best sales you can give them, create that connection, and hope it all works out, because it is out. The rest of that adjustments and how you apply them and all that is sort of out of your control in a big way. So what can you control? You can control your interaction with them and how that goes. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm a guy that no matter how bad you treat, I'm going to do the right thing. That's it. That's what we do. And I need that. I have been treated like the doorman. I have been treated all kinds of ways. And I've been treated like royalty. And let me tell you, when you're treated like royalty, you didn't hear it from me, but maybe that appraiser is going to do everything they can to figure out how they can help you.
They're people. They're people.
Like, what if somebody was rude to you and they wanted to do more of you? And, you're like, well, whatever, I got him. They're a client. And you're like, but you don't go to the ends of the earth to help them. You do what you have to do to get it done. And maybe they really don't get the loan versus somebody who you go, man, I really connect. I love this person. She's so nice. She's called me at 1:00 in the morning. And you know what? It drives me nuts, but I really like them. They're just really cool. They're really cool people. And most real cool people, what makes them cool is they actually listen to you. It's not what they say. It's the fact that they actually shut up and listen to you. And man, you're like, that's what makes them cool. Yeah, you're like, gosh, that's really cool. Like, yeah. And then you're like, but I don't even know anything about it. But they listen to me. And you'll do anything. You're like, man, I know we can get your credit score up. Just give me a couple weeks. Pay that off. And da. And
it is funny
about helping them.
You have this great impression of somebody. Meanwhile, they barely said anything because they were just open and listening to you speak, and they were interested in what you had to say. What's that?
They asked you questions about yourself.
That's it.
And they said, "Oh, Craig, oh my gosh, I didn't know you like. Where do you like to fish anyway?" Like, oh wow, they find out one thing. Where you like to go on vacation. Oh my gosh, I've been to Rome. It's some fantastic. What do you think? But they keep asking you. so that you're opening up yourself. They're not going to keep, what do we all hate? Somebody keeps bragging and talking about themselves. You're like,
We never run into people like that in the sales business, right? No,
especially not in South Florida.
no, never. Yeah.
No, so it's an interesting dynamic of you as an appraiser getting hit constantly with, so how do you make adjustments? What's a pool worth? Da 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 da. And in actuality, those are all the wrong questions. Because you're never going to get that answer anyway. Real. Pooling in my neighborhoods work a different thing in your neighborhood.
It's all based on what the market shows, right? It's all based on what the market shows. And yeah.
Market reacts.
Anything that's coming as far as appraisals, the appraisal world goes that you can speak about at this time? I think we had a little bit of a conversation offhand and offline about some of the new changes that are potentially coming down the road. Is that a topic you want to broach?
Very afraid. Yes.
Yeah.
Market calls out one that 3.6 is coming, which is a new way of doing the appraisal reports. I think it allows the agencies to collect more data on most of stuff that's been done. I am testing the form myself, and it is laborious. I think, it's got a run period, a beta testing period, and then it's going to go theoretically live a couple months into the new year. I wonder if that will really happen. The freight train says yes, it's going to happen regardless. I think it could create huge positive if it does. The on-site inspection will be 2 to 3 times longer to collect the data on the property. I think the prices of appraisers could go through the roof because of this, or you're going to have a lot of people exit business, and if they exit business, your price is going to go through the roof because of that.
Yeah.
Limited supply. So, now, from a lender standpoint, I love that because when you guys are going through appraisal, there is no set uniformity. Appraisal should be like a book. There's a certain order that would make sense. But every appraiser puts them in a different order. You got the invoice here, you got the map on the last page, you got the photos. If you think about it logically, an appraisal can look where it sequentially makes sense, but I rarely see that. Whereas this 3.6 does that. It gives you uniformity of look, in formatting and all of that. So it has a lot of good things that make sense, but it's a very laborious task now to do that. So I think it's an upcoming train wreck, and I'm sure we will figure it out all together, right thing, and when it really rolls out and whether these statements does it. But it's a little daunting in the way we fish it.
Got it. Well, we'll probably have to. I think this has been really great spending the time with you, and I think that you've given us a lot of very good information. I know that's going to be something coming down the road, but I'm sure I have a bunch more questions I could ask you. So maybe we'll have to do this again if you're willing to come back on. So appreciate your time, Phil. Thanks so much, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Phil.